instead of just sitting and getting all day long. So in about 60 seconds, when I say go, you're going to have the wonderful opportunity to walk around this room and get 3 signatures in a row. You get to choose your route. Everybody say, thanks for the choice, Leanne. Choice is motivating. It is. And it actually, the kids sit there and think, oh, I've got a choice. They don't think, let me see how I can disrupt this activity. All of a sudden, they feel empowered. So your choice today, you can go ask 3 different people these 3 questions, or these 3 questions, or these 3 questions. So I would possibly walk up to Laura here and say, Laura, what do you already know about deeper learning? And she would say, blah, 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 and sign my box. Now, because I asked her, she's probably going to ask me, and she's going this route. So she says, Leanne, what questions do you have about deeper learning? And I would say, blah, 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 and sign her box. We're just talking about the topic, but I'm creating some structure to it. So it's tic-tac-toe, 3 signatures in a row. When you finish, if the music's still going, go get a 4th signature. And then in about 2.5 minutes, we'll wrap it up, and then I'll go right into the next chunk of information. So everybody, please stand up, grab a pencil, and go and get those 3 signatures. Welcome back, everybody. Make sure you say thanks for playing to the people you're talking with. Say thank you. And how many people got tic-tac-toe 3 signatures in a row? If you did, please shout out, I'm a super sleuth. Awesome. Now, why is super sleuth? I mean, is this a deeper learning activity? It can be if I put the right questions in there. Everybody agree? Okay. It's also the beginning of deeper learning. It's preparing their brain to get ready to attach more in-depth, more complex content to a neural network that's just been firmly established, we hope. And by the way, it's active. It gets the kids out of their chairs. How many of you enjoyed getting out of the chair? Some of you were like, no, I wanted to sit. Thank you, Leanne. Social. Accountability was needed at the high school level. If they goof off, they already know my rule. If they choose to talk about other things versus this, then I'll tell them you're going to have to paraphrase what the other person says in the box. And, you know, just do that once and they'll never get off task again. A variety of questions. There were times that I differentiated this activity. These kids were ready to synthesize what I taught. So they get this type of super sleuth. These kids over here, they just needed the basics. So they were asking basic questions to get the basic definition of the word down in their head. So I can tweak and change those super sleuths to meet their needs. So anyway, if you teach the younger kids pictures to explain, you have the kids talk about pictures. You can put some Spanish words in the box that go along with the pictures, whatever you're teaching them. But I'm going to share with you how you can use it to review and how you can use it to teach vocabulary. Let me show you a few examples from teachers across the nation. This guy's clever. High school teacher. Kids with low background knowledge. And DNA is just too abstract, he said. So the way he made it more concrete, look at this. Find someone who has seen a spiral staircase before. And the kids are like, okay, our teacher is weird. Find someone who knows a set of twins. Well, that's easy. Find someone who has a zipper on. Okay, he has lost his rocker here. So the kids all of a sudden are asking weird questions, but the day finally comes. By the way, he gave this a week ahead of time, so he used it to prime their brain. A week later, he says, today I'm going to tell you how DNA is like a what? Spiral staircase. They will never forget that DNA looks like a spiral staircase. And then it acts like a zipper in that. Okay, so then he used all of these concrete objects to help them understand the pieces. So, say check if that's a pretty good super sleuth. Okay, here's one. Reading nonfiction. We know with Common Core State Standards, our kids will be reading more nonfiction than maybe what they're used to. And you can ask kids to go around and talk to one another. What was the main idea of the passage that you just read? What did you learn? List one amazing fact. What pictures caught your attention and why? This is for kids reading different books or maybe reading the same book. So again, I love to use it after reading comprehension. This one's a narrative. After dinner time, how many of you teachers in here, elementary or middle school or high school, allow your kids to read silently for some time? Well, don't let them hog that book. Allow them an opportunity to share that book, because that is how kids want to start reading other kids' books. I'll do this on Fridays so that the kids start saying, hey, I want to read your book next week. I want to read your book next week, because that was cool. And last but not least, actually I've got 2 more examples. This is a review. After learning about the North Pole, here are review questions, and then right here in the middle is a priming question, because they're getting ready to learn about the tundra. So teachers, you can mix and match your questions. The sky's the limit with 9 boxes. You could even just do 6 boxes. I, Leanne Nicholson, do not like teaching my kids vocabulary words. I already know what the word means. So I allow them the wonderful opportunity to teach one another those words. This is one of my favorite ways to do it. Now, this takes me some time, but it's okay, because these kids don't forget these 6 words. I mean, what middle schooler is going to walk up to someone else and forget this? Can you please describe a pungent smell that you have experienced recently? They talk about it. They laugh about it. These are words they don't forget. And by the way, I tested it. The next day, I gave everybody a little pop quiz, and they had to use the word in a sentence. Unbelievable. So I use a super sleuth often to teach vocabulary. Raise your hand if you think that's a much better way to teach vocabulary than the 30 words on a list and a definition and say, know these by Friday, which, by the way, does not work. That causes stress, and it's out of the brain by Saturday morning. Okay. So anyway, this is how I teach vocabulary, and guess what? It works. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas as well today, because many of you do teach vocabulary. At this time, though, I'd like for you to turn to 2 or 3 people around you. Don't leave anybody out. It can be 4, but the goal is around 2 or 3 people, and say good afternoon to those people. Now look at those people and say, we are now officially a small group. Okay, if you are a small group, here is your next, you have a minute and a half to brainstorm. How can you use Super Sleuth in whatever area you teach? By the way, if you're an administrator, how can you use one in a faculty meeting and introduce the strategy so that your teachers use it? If you teach kindergarten, how can you use these 9 boxes or 6 boxes, or hey, maybe it's 4 boxes? How can you use this maybe the first week of school? So I'm going to give you a minute and a half to brainstorm. Come up with at least 2 or 3 ideas as a group. On your marks, get set, and go. Welcome back, everybody. Please look at each of those people and say, you have a great brain. Okay. How many people have a way to apply this in their classroom soon? Excellent. I just gave you a little example of deeper learning. I taught you a little bit, you experienced it, and then I asked you to what? Apply it. Now eventually you'll be able to synthesize it and evaluate it at much higher levels once you use it in your what? Classroom. So I'm going to move on to the very first chunk. What is deeper learning? This is our big essential question. Leanne, what is it? Can all kids really get there? Yes, they can. And you're going to have to facilitate it, and you're also going to have to differentiate the pieces as well. So let's first of all learn what simple learning is. By the way, turn to page 6, and you will see simple learning. I'm not going to read this to you. Is that okay with everybody? Yes. Because that would be called simple learning. And I would not be respecting your brains if I read it to you. You can read the pieces that you want. I've got the definition right here. It's just one-time learning. It's one-word responses sometimes. Maybe it's a phrase. Here are a whole bunch of examples, memorizing historical dates, multiplication tables, okay, synonyms, conditioned response. We've got pros. It is simple and fast. We've got some cons, though, because it can take some time to get all this in our memory. But it is needed. We're not getting rid of the multiplication tables. We're not getting rid of it's important to know certain dates. Here's what I'd like to say, though. We spend far too much time on that simple learning. Nod your head if you agree. That we sometimes don't get to the deeper learning. So I'm going to give you some ways today to get simple learning in the brain faster so that we can get to the depths, because that's the #1 complaint. Teachers will say, Leanne, this deeper learning sounds great, but there's not enough time. Well, it's because we're not including me, and it is something I have changed completely in my classroom. Let's get the simple learning in their heads faster and more powerfully so we can get to those depths. And now let's look at what deeper learning is. I can get the cord away from me. Deeper learning. It's acquisition of new content or skills that must be learned in more than one step. It's not just memory of concepts, not even close. Your brain is actually going to hurt a little when you're going through deeper learning. You're going to be really racking your brain. And guess what? There's not a kid out there that doesn't like to be challenged. You just can't over-challenge that kid too many times in a row and have him or her feel failure, because then learned helplessness settles in. We've got to challenge our kids. I walk in classrooms and I see this. Worksheets done in 5 minutes, and then they goof off and throw paper wads, whatever it might be. It is happening all over the nation. We've got to challenge them and get them really thinking. There is no time goofing off. They got problems to solve. We've got a lot of problems to solve. Everybody agree? And let's use our kids to help them create, not create the problems, but solve some of the problems. We need them to do that. We've got examples here. Reading. Reading's complex. Lots of different things occurring in the brain when reading happens. Multidisciplinary thinking. I've been talking so much today. Solving problems by devising solutions. It's project-based learning. Anybody know project-based learning? Love project-based learning. It's how to negotiate. It's debating. It's getting kids to feel passionate about something and standing up and being able to talk about it, or maybe write about it. More argumentative writing is occurring with our Common Core. Usually, sometimes we call this higher level thinking, complex processing. Pros, many of the things that bring us the most satisfaction in life come from deeper learning. There are times we're in a flow, and we're just really enjoying it. Then we've got some cons. It does take a little more time in that classroom. I'm going to give you lots of strategies to make it easy, I promise. And then it tells you about the timepiece as well. Now, I've decided that when I have a whole day workshop on deeper learning, here's what I make the teachers do. They have to compare and contrast simple learning to deeper learning. Everybody say thanks, because I'm not going to make you do that right now. I'm going to have you do something else with it instead, because I'm going to have you use one of the activities. But I don't read pages 5 and 6 to them. Instead, on a whole day workshop, I give them those 2 pages, and they get in smaller groups, and they create this piece right here. It's what's simple learning, and then what's deeper learning. But I'm going to ask you guys to process it in a different way. And so the slide I want to share with you is, hey, deeper learning is getting the kids to do most of the thinking. It's students learn to think by what, everybody? And at this point, you might think you have the worst job in the world, but you do not. A little humor before I give you your assignment. Please turn to page 11. Page 11. It's called 4-choice processing, and I haven't met a kid that doesn't like it. Yes, kindergarten, first grade teachers, you're going to need to tweak this a little bit. Narrow it down to 2 choices per box. And you might have them do more drawing of their thinking versus writing, depending on where the kids are at. But here's what I can give adults, and you guys can change it and tweak it however you might need to. In box number 1, you get to describe or define deeper learning, or you can write a whole bunch of different words that are related to deeper learning. By the way, those webs in your packet will help you do that. How could you illustrate deeper learning? I've seen some amazing illustrations of this very abstract word, deeper learning. Or how would you summarize deeper learning? Whatever you choose, you get to circle it and answer in a box number 1. Now do this in pencil. That way you can keep using that graphic organizer, or maybe you have scrap paper, and that's fine too. Box number 2. Now it's time to list some examples of deeper learning, or write some pros and cons about deeper learning, or how would you categorize, classify, or group the word deeper learning, or what would you compare it with and why? Hey, you could compare it to simple learning. I'm only going to ask you to do boxes 1 and 2. Now, at the end of the workshop, I could ask you to do number 3 and 4, and you would do it really well. But I decided to give you other strategies to do at the end of the workshop. Does that sound okay with everybody? I just wanted you to try out one of my favorites, and the ones that the students have said, Mrs. Nicholson, this is one of our favorite deeper learning strategies. Thank you for the choice. So at this time, I'm going to give you about a minute, minute and a half. You can do this independently, or you can do it with someone you're sitting next to. I'm going to let you choose. And you choose one, you circle it, and you answer it in boxes 1 and 2. On your marks, get set, and reflect.